God never left me. He was walking through everything with me. I was mad, right? I had my hand out like this, like, you can stay 10 feet from me. I do not want you anywhere near me. But he never went away. He was still there. He was still comforting me. He was still saying, I'm going to hold your hand through this. I'm not going to leave. I'm standing here with you. I'm going to go through the muck with you.
You're listening to God Hears Her, a podcast for women where we explore the stunning truth that God hears you, He sees you, and He loves you because you are His. Find out how these realities free you today on God Hears Her.
Welcome to God Hears Her. I'm Eryn Adkins.
And I'm Elisa Morgan. When was the last time you felt jealous? Do you ever struggle with just harboring jealousy?
We can all accidentally let the seed of jealousy take root in our hearts, especially when we don't treat the issues, allowing it to just grow in the first place. Today, we talk with Bethany Toney about how jealousy grew in her marriage and led to some big changes in her life and relationship.
Let's start off this God Hears Her conversation by asking Bethany how she met her husband, Tyler.
So we met in high school on the way back from a church camp trip. So at the time, he had super long hair, wore puka shells, like had this kind of like awesome. Surfer dude look to him, I guess. Super tan.
Oh, gosh.
I had a boyfriend at the time, so I was sitting next to him. My best friend actually noticed Tyler and was like, he's really cute. I'm gonna go see if I can talk to him. So then she ends up sitting by him for like the 15-hour drive that we had, right?
Gosh, yeah.
And long story short, they started dating after that. And I was kind of the third wheel friend. I was just the buddy that would come along and support my friend in her new relationship.
I love it.
And I'm a year older than Tyler. So we met my senior year summer. So I was going off to college in August. And my friend Carly, who he dated, was going to A&M. So their relationship fizzled. But ironically, we all stayed in touch and we all would come home for the holidays and we would immediately get in our cars and head straight to Prosper. So Tyler actually grew up in the town that we live in.
Oh, cool.
And back then it was back roads and super country, which was just fascinating to me because I came from the city life. Every time we were home, we were in our car driving to Tyler's house and it was just four-wheeling and playing in the creek and just really simple living. And so I just thought it was so fun. Tyler, as you may know, is super adventurous. And so I always kind of had a crush on him, but I never wanted to admit it because he was kind of known for being the guy that dated all the girls. So I was like, I am not going to be one of those girls.
I am not that girl.
I'm not that girl. So our parents would even joke about us dating, and I just always pushed it off. And so I actually dated a lot of his friends. He dated a lot of my friends. Our wedding should have been really awkward. It wasn't, thank goodness, because everyone just was kind of cool about it. So my senior year of college, so fast forward 4 years, we've been best friends, hung out all the time when I was home and he was home. I think the stars just kind of aligned at that point, and we were like, hey, I kind of like you. And he was like, yeah, I kind of like you too. And should we try this? And it was scary because we had been best friends and I didn't want to ruin that relationship with him.
Yeah.
But we did take the plunge. And then a year later we were engaged.
Wow.
So, and then 10 months after that we were married. So yeah, it kind of all happened quickly, but I think because we had that foundation of friendship before, it could have,
very natural.
Yeah, it was very, very natural. So it's kind of our story. And then we got married and moved to McKinney. I worked for a graphic design company.
Okay.
So that's what I went to school for. And Tyler, he has a degree in, what is it? I always joke and say that he can be a park ranger someday. It's like wildlife and ecology. So he loves to be outside and all that stuff.
That's awesome.
So after I graduated, I worked for this company and did graphic design for them. And then Tyler was still at A&M, finishing up his senior year. And then he graduated and worked at Superscapes, which is a landscaping company. So he worked long hours. And we did that for the first couple years of our marriage. And we had a dog and everything was really simple and easy, honestly, that first couple of years. Obviously, adjusting to married life was a challenge. Just living with a man is always a challenge, I guess. But I mean, everything was really easy peasy and simple.
When did it take a turn where it was like, wow, life is simple to like, wow, life is not simple anymore?
I would say probably after we had our second child. So we had our first child, Barrett, in 2017. and struggled to get pregnant with him. So I had miscarriages before
Oh, so sorry.
I had him. Yeah, it was quite a journey. That was probably the first time in my life that I questioned the goodness of God. I questioned if he was real, honestly, because my whole life, everything had kind of worked out perfectly for me. I really hadn't struggled with anything. I just felt like God had taken care of me because I was obedient to him and I was doing all the right things, right? And I thought, well, A plus B should equal C when it comes to me wanting a baby.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't happening. And I really went into a dark place for the first time in a long time, spiritually, emotionally, which is, I think that's probably one of the biggest parts of my story as far as my faith journey, because I had never questioned God's goodness and God's love for me before.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I had all this anger and resentment. And I would look at other moms with babies. I would be happy for them, but then I would be so incredibly sad for myself. And it was a strange feeling that I've never had before. And I remember I should have been struck by lightning the way that I prayed, because I was praying so open to God about just my anger and how mad I was at him. And how could you do this to me? Like, I've been so faithful and my family's been faithful. Like, what's going on? Like, what? And I immediately started to think, what sin am I being punished for? And that's where my brain went, which is so not my theology. And that's not what I don't believe that God punishes us for our sins later in life by withholding children from us, the things that we want. God wants to give us the desires of our heart. And so I knew that.
But we get so wonky when we're suffering. We really do. Yeah.
It does. Yeah, you really do go into this dark place. I remember music has always been a huge part of my life, with my dad being a music minister, and I love singing. And I was on our worship team at the time. And I remember being up there and singing the words, but knowing and thinking in my head, God, I don't believe this. I don't believe. Right now, I am just putting on a show because I have to. But right now, God, I am mad. I am so fire mad at you. And I don't believe these words right now. But I think looking back, I'm so thankful that I still sung those words out loud, because in a weird way, I think it did kind of, I don't know, it made me kind of still say the promises of God out loud, and maybe subconsciously that sunk in somewhere.
Yeah.
But I was just mad.
I want to pause right there. The truth is, even when you were having those conversations, you were having them with him, which is still a relationship. And that's so beautiful that you were able to give your rawest feelings about everything about him, your circumstance, everything. And go, I don't even know who you are anymore. Are you punishing me? That's so beautiful in the midst
very
of
courageous too,
yes.
and to admit that. And I think it's very freeing to others listening who are experiencing that exactly right now. But now take us forward. How did things begin to become stretched in your marriage? You had trouble getting pregnant, and that's a unique suffering, and anger at God, and that's painful suffering.
Well, that was like the jump off point, I think, from where everything started, was the infertility issues, wanting to get pregnant, being angry at God. And then I did get pregnant, actually kind of out of nowhere. And you would think I would have been so excited and saying, God, you're amazing. Look at the blessing that you've given me. But my attitude was more, well, it was about time. Like, I've been waiting. Thanks, God.
Wow.
Like, check.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, I should have been struck by lightning.
No, that's so
Oh,
real.
I do
No,
too.
that is real though.
I was a part of this Bible study at the time, and with a group of women who were walking through infertility at the same time. And I remember one girl specifically just kept saying, I just want to suffer well. I want to suffer well during this season. And I was like, I'm out. I don't want to suffer well. I'm mad.
I don't want to suffer, period. Right.
No. Yeah. I don't want to suffer at all.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking after everything, I was like, I did not suffer well at all. It was not good. So that was probably the foundation of everything. And then we got pregnant with Colton. He's our middle boy. We have 3 boys. And that was kind of the craziest summer of my life. Gave birth to Colton in June, was in the hospital for 2 days, like normal, and then came home, and we came home to this house with boxes everywhere. And then the next day after that, Tyler left for the very first Dude Perfect tour. I went from having 1 kid to all of a sudden having 2 and feeling super isolated and feeling really alone in this brand new beautiful home that we had worked so hard on. But there's boxes everywhere. I have a crying baby. I'm sleep deprived, all the things, right? And then my husband's off doing this fantastic tour, meeting with celebrities, golfing every day. And I'll tell you what, the seed of resentment was really deep in my heart at that time. I struggled finding joy in what he was doing. Every time he would call me, I would just be like, oh, that's so great for you. Well, I've been up since 3 a.m. with a fussy, I was just resentful and angry at him. Our marriage then was already kind of rocky simply because I felt like I was always put second after Dude Perfect. Dude Perfect demanded so much attention and time and effort and energy.
Tell us what your husband does and how has that affected you in your marriage?
Yes. So Tyler is a part of a group called Dude Perfect. It's on YouTube. It's with 5 of his closest friends from college. That's how it started. They do trick shots. So they're not the Harlem Globetrotters. They don't do live trick shots, but they make these unbelievable trick shots from high places such as Reunion Tower in Dallas. Their big one was Kyle Field at A&M. Tyler throws the basketball and it lands into the hoop. They were a overnight sensation.
Okay.
They uploaded their very first video. I don't even know what year it was. It was kind of a joke. They made this video for their family and friends to see, and it was just them throwing a basketball like off the roof or over the fence and making it into the basket. Well, the next morning they all wake up and Good Morning America has gotten a hold of it, and the video has millions of views, which at the time was just unheard of, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of blew up. And so Dude Perfect started before we were dating, but it wasn't a full-time gig. It was kind of his side hustle, more like a hobby at the time, really just something fun he did with his friends. But it started to get really serious and kind of took a different turn around the time that I got pregnant with Colton. That's kind of when things catapulted into another level of, I guess, him being a public figure, people seeing him and recognizing him. Their channel really blew up.
So you've got this anger that's been brewing in you about being infertile and struggling with miscarriages. And then you've got him just going off the charts, publicly. And then you're isolated alone while he's out on tour, and you're feeling completely missed and abandoned and hidden. And I'm starting to feel it with you.
It was so hard. It's funny, when our I Am Second video came out, we kind of got a lot of backlash for me talking about how isolated I felt and how alone I felt while my husband was out being successful, because a lot of people would say, or were saying in some comments, they were like, I mean, but he's a celebrity. Like, you should be happy. You should be thankful that he gets to do these things and that y'all have the lifestyle that you have. And I'm like, but I'm still human. I'm still human. I still want to be seen. I still want my husband to come home and spend time with our family. Like, I can see how the world could see it and say, oh, boo-hoo. I'm so sorry that your husband got to hang out with Justin Timberlake on the golf course, and while you're at all the things, I can see how that side, the world can see it that way. But when you're living it and you're isolated and you feel alone, I was probably walking through a little bit of postpartum depression and I didn't recognize it at the time. So all the different components to it. Again, I've always been kind of the extroverted one, the one that loves to be on stage singing, doing pageants. So I've kind of always been in the limelight, right? And now all of a sudden my husband is. So I think there was also that struggle with thinking, wait, hold on here. Like, I'm the one that has the big boisterous personality, and was super selfish of me to think that. But I think it was this power dynamic of I'm having to sit on the sidelines while my husband is being catapulted into fame.
Yes.
So I'm the one that's sitting here at night at 3 a.m. feeding my child while he's out rubbing elbows with celebrities and bigwigs and all the things. And it just didn't feel, it didn't feel even. It didn't feel balanced.
And you probably felt hidden too.
I did. Yeah. I kind of felt like I was always introduced as Tyler's wife. This is Tyler's wife. Or this is Dude Perfect's wife. Oh, gosh. He wasn't even a name. It was just Dude Perfect. And I didn't have an identity, and I wanted an identity.
Yeah. How did that resentment start building up in you, start affecting your marriage when he would come home?
Oh, when he would come home, I would very much, it turned into a roommate situation. I felt like we were just ships in the night. Yeah. He would come home and want to spend time with, to his credit, he would really try but I had so much resentment built up, I would push him away. I'd be like, well, I'm going to go to bed early, or I don't want to watch the show. I'm going to go in the other room and read. And I would really separate myself from him at night after the kids would go down. Or I also would just bury my head in the sand with my children. So that's such an easy distraction because they literally demand all your time and energy. So it was easy for me to avoid my relationship with my husband because I was giving everything of myself to my children. So we were both giving each other our leftovers at the end of the day. So there was we weren't pouring into each other. Nobody's cup was getting filled at all. And so he started to build up some resentment with that. I start continuing to build up my resentment, and we just put up a wall between us. But to the outside world, man, we had it together. We were the picture perfect Instagram family. We show up to church every Sunday with big smiles on our faces. I mean, nobody knew. We played the game so well. But I would go home and just cry myself to sleep almost every night going, is this how my marriage is going to be forever? Forever, this is what my life's going to be like? I'm just going to be on the edge of the spotlight for the rest of my life. And that was really hard. So anyways, that's probably where that wall and resentment started to go up, was when I had Colton. And then God laid a surprise. Colton was 4 months old and I got pregnant again with Rhett.
Oh my gosh.
So my marriage is in shambles at the time, and I all of a sudden am pregnant again. And I just remember being so upset because not only because I was like, I have to do this all over again, but because the foundation of our marriage was so rocky that I was going to have to do this by myself once again. And so that was daunting to me, to be like, here we go. I mean, I just got through kind of the hump with Colton and the newborn stuff, and now we're going to have to do it all over again. I also get extremely sick during my pregnancies, and so that can be really depressive when you're getting sick every day.
What happens next?
So COVID hit.
Oh, that's a big one. That's a big one.
So I'm pregnant with Rhett. COVID hit, and I'm just at my wit's end. And I remember laying in bed one night and thinking, I can't do this anymore. I don't know. I don't think I can do this. Like, I don't want to wake up tomorrow and be his wife. This is miserable. But I was also with the feeling of the shame of divorce, the shame of leaving my husband who's in the public eye, and knowing that that could potentially be on the front cover of some magazine. Like, it was terrifying. And I wrestled with that. But at the end of the day, I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I feel so lonely. I'm so isolated. He's choosing dude perfect over me, and I will not stand for it. That next day, I just kind of laid it out for him, and I just said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I don't know what that looks like, but I need some time. I need time away from you. I need time just to process what my next steps are. And I think he was shocked, but I think he saw it coming in a way. But it was still obviously really devastating. And it was terrifying because I had a newborn, and then I had basically another baby, and then a 3-year-old at the time. So it was just like, how am I going to do this? I don't know what my next moves are. So then, because I'm extremely open and honest, I immediately told my family. We immediately got his family involved, my friends involved. I just wanted advice. Thank goodness I did that, because I had a friend who flew in from Houston, a friend that I'm going to cry. She's been with me through so much of my struggles, through infertility and my marriage. And she was the one that looked at me and said, this is not honor God to leave your husband. Y'all's story could be fantastic. God's going to use this. Like, please just try and save your marriage. And she was the one who really coached me through it, counseled me through it. If I didn't have her at that time, I probably wouldn't be with Tyler right now. She was kind of the one that held my hand and said, I'm going to do this with you. We're going to walk through this together. We're going to do the hard work together. I'll help you. And Tyler actually had a friend that did that for him as well.
Oh, wow.
So separately, these two friends, not knowing it, were being the physical Jesus to us at the time that we needed. That person that just said, I don't think this is God's will for your marriage. And I was still really angry, right? So it was hard to hear that, but I thought, okay, I'm not going to give Satan this win. I'm just not. I want to fight for my marriage, because I'm not going to let him have this win over my family. But it was also scary because I was not happy, and I had every reason to leave. I remember going to my therapist and saying, I 100% understand why women divorce their husbands, because it's sometimes the easier option, because working on your marriage is hard. It is not fun. It's gritty. Let me say also that there are circumstances where I think divorce is the right answer, right? In my situation, for me, I don't think it was. we needed deep counseling. We needed a lot of therapy and it took a lot of work.
When you went through all of that, was there something that happened within your husband?
Yes.
That you needed to see in order to trust the process and the journey?
Yes. I'm so glad you asked that because yes, that's a huge part of it, right? So I asked for some separation from him for a while. And so he ended up being with his mom and dad for a little bit. And he had his friend that was pouring into him, kind of speaking truth into him. And that's when a lot of the ugliness started to kind of rear its ugly head, I guess. Because like with anything, sin is never one layer, right? Sin, there's always layers to sin and layers to the reasons why things are happening. So it came out that Tyler had been struggling with pornography pretty much since high school. And I did not know that. It was very much a secret. And, you know, with that, I think he had a lot of pride, and he admits to this, right? And he talks about this in the I Am Second video. So I think our family was kind of put on the back burner. We weren't the number one focus. So when it came out that he had been struggling with pornography, in a weird way, I was very relieved because I felt like it was something tangible that I could fix. Yeah. I was like, great, there's programs for this. Like, we'll put covenant eyes on our computers. The tension of our marriage and the resentment felt scary and like messy and big and something that I didn't know how to conquer. But the pornography issue, I was like, okay, great, we can do this head on. We can figure this out. Obviously, it's not that simple, but to me, I was like, oh, this is fixable. Yeah. But that was also super hurtful to find out in the middle of already being hurt. But I just thought, okay, God, he's being extremely vulnerable with me and open with me about a lot of stuff. So I need to be as open and vulnerable with him as well. So we basically just decided to both put in the work, and we both went to therapy separately. We never did therapy together, which I kind of wish we did, but he was being mentored by a group of friends and some ministers at our church. And it was really all about just being open and honest at that point. But he did come to me and said, I have a list of things that I want to change in our marriage to make things better and stronger. And the list was about 10 items long. And it was, you know, everything from praying together before bed, him coming home and spending intentional time with me, putting the phones down, having that carved out time away from our children together, doing date nights, like very simple things, but it made my family be on the forefront of his mind. Communicating more while he's on tour or he's traveling. It's hard to say this is what happened to make everything fall apart. It was a bunch of little things over time, and I just broke. It did take us both saying, okay, we both have to work at this. And that was another big thing that I had to realize through therapy, was because I kept saying, well, Tyler did this and he struggled with this and he's the one who messed up here, and I've just been the perfect person over here being the mom, and I've done nothing wrong and all these things. It's very easy to point the finger at the person whose sin is bigger in that situation. But I had to learn that I had to put in just as much work as he did.
What kind of work did you have to do?
I mean, therapy for one. I love therapy. I think everyone needs to do it. And then just being open and honest with him about how I was feeling. Because before, we really didn't have great communication. So it was actually saying, hey, you did this today and it really upset me. Or I didn't like the way you did this. Or same with me though. He would say the same things to me. Hey, today, like, I really need you to pump me up in this way. Or, I mean, even down to like intimacy, right? Like being open and honest about that, because he did struggle with pornography. So I had a lot of questions about that.
Well, and the repair of that, repairing your marriage to want to be vulnerable with somebody.
And that was hard. That was probably one of the harder aspects, was being intimate again after knowing he had struggled with it for so long, and doing the comparison game. And man, I mean, I remember I still sometimes do have to pray before having intimacy with Tyler, because I get in my head and then I'm thinking about that. It's just not good. So having to pray before being intimate with your husband is a little strange, but
no, it's not.
It
Girl,
does
no,
kind of calm. It kind of calms my brain a little bit.
Thank you for your honesty here. There's so much I'm hearing in you, realization of what you are feeling, of what you need, of how you've defined what's right and what's wrong. Kudos for what you're doing. And how is your relationship now?
Our communication has improved tenfold. We still have our days where I'm like, hello, you haven't called me. Did your flight land? Like, are you good? Are you alive? But I feel like now everything is just more open, and I don't feel scared to go to him and say, hey, like, let's work on this, or hey, this is how I feel right now, or him coming to me. I mean, we're vulnerable in the sense of I'll straight up ask him, have you struggled with pornography lately? Yeah. And also learning to not get upset about it if he has, or if he is honest with me, and appreciating the honesty over shaming him, because sin is, I mean, it's an ongoing battle. And I think people who struggle with pornography, it is forever an issue, like something that they battle, kind of like alcoholism or anything like that. You're not just cured one day from it. I think it's a constant thing that you have to work at and check up on. Our marriage it's just feels seamless now. I don't feel like there's this tension, this anger. He's present with our children. I feel like I spend more time with him. We're more intentional about our date nights and intimacy time. All those things have just kind of started to fall into place. It took a lot of work. It wasn't like it happened overnight. Yeah. I still have hard days where I get a little jealous of what he's getting to do while I'm at home having a hard day with my toddlers now, or whatever it is.
That's so freeing for anybody listening, because I think when you start to hear testimonies of people recovering and rebuilding their marriage, there's this fantasy that can be created when God is working through individuals that all of a sudden everything clicks. It's magic again. That's not true. Like God is working through us constantly to sanctify each of us as individuals to come together. And so I just think that's really beautiful that you're able to say, we have good days, we have bad days, but we are working through the thick and the thin of it. And we are committed and dedicated to that first and foremost with God in our marriage. I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah, because I don't think, I mean, people are saying, oh, I mean, y'all hit kind of like the worst part of your marriage you'll probably ever go through. And I'm like, well, who's to say that? I don't know. We have 3 boys to raise here. Like, who knows? You know, we've got a lot of ground to carry here or to see in the future. I don't know. So I think now if we do face hard times, because we will face more hard times in the future, we're well more equipped to handle it than we were before.
What's one thing that you would share with a woman listening right now that feels where you were feeling in the very beginning, where you felt unseen, maybe angry at God? Is there something that you want to maybe tell her that you wish somebody told you in that season?
I like how y'all said earlier how I was still in communication with God, even when I was angry with him. And I didn't at the time realize that God never left me. He was walking through everything with me. I was mad, right? I had my hand out like this, like, you can stay 10 feet from me. I do not want you anywhere near me. But he never went away. He was still there. He was still comforting me. He was still saying, I'm going to hold your hand through this. Like, I'm not going to leave. I'm standing here with you. I'm going to go through the muck with you. Even though I was so seething mad, just knowing that he never left. He never went anywhere. And I think that's so important to remember, that when you're in a dark place, God has not forgotten you. He loves you more than anything in this entire world. And so he sees your sadness and it upsets him, but he's not going to just leave because it's hard. Nothing's too hard for him. Nothing's too heavy, too dark for God to carry. And I think I knew that at the time, but I didn't really know that because I was so in my own head about how I felt. Again, I did not suffer well. And I wish I would have. I wish I would have taken that time to grow closer to God than to push him away, because looking back, I feel like if I had taken that time to grow closer to God, where would I be now in my relationship with him? I feel like I kind of missed out a little bit because of my anger. But I know at the same time, God has me exactly where he wanted me to be.
God has us exactly where we need to be. Bethany was so honest and raw during this conversation.
I'm glad to hear how her marriage has changed for the better. They really put in the work to heal together. Well, before we go, be sure to check out our website to find a link for the newest God Hears Her blog. You can also find a link to check out the Dude Perfect YouTube channel. We've heard it's great for kids and families. You can find that and more on our website at godhearsher.org. That's godhearsher.org.
Thank you for joining us, and don't forget, God hears you, he sees you, and he loves you because you are his.
Today's episode was engineered by Ann Stevens and produced by Jade Gustman and Mary Jo Clark. We also want to thank Elisa and Steph for all of their help and support. Thanks, everyone.
God Hears Her is a production of Our Daily Bread Ministries.